Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Squadron Supreme. We are rounding down the issues. Only 3 left. Let me know in the comments whose side you're on. The Squadron Supreme and hashtag Team Hype, or Nighthawk's Redeemers. Hashtag Team NH. The Custodians, Agents of Cross. This 6-issue comic series asks the all-important question: what would happen if the only heroes that can save the world are an intelligent baboon, the world's smartest man with the power of elasticity only in his right arm, a teenage girl who controls fire, and a 4-armed werewolf? Find out now, because issue 3 is releasing weekly over on my Patreon, with issues 1 and 2 having been uploaded there in their entirety. Each book of this 6-issue series is going to be over 50 pages. The last issue is closer to 70. Only $15 for these books. Far better deal than anything you'll get from Marvel or DC these days. The Custodians, Agents of Cross, issue 3. Sees our heroes, the Custodians, as they travel to the Rallian Institute for Accelerated Learning to meet the most fantastic supergroup in training, the Infinitum Brood. It also features 2 backup stories: Let's Get Happy, in which the Neuronaut must mentally battle the villainous Gray Matter, and The Bench That Wouldn't Stop, where an evil city councilman summons a demonic bench that eats people. Released in 1985, written by Mark Grunwald with art by Paul Ryan. This is Squadron Supreme 10, The Dark from Within. Previously on Squadron Supreme. Outside, Lady Lark walks alone through the facility, and then Blue Eagle finds her. And she completely ignores him, telling him that whatever fling they were thinking of igniting before no longer exists. Then Blue Eagle leaps out onto the floor and announces that he has concerns of 2 core members of their group, Lady Lark and Golden Archer. He calls to question how strange she's been acting these past few months. Spectrum tries to defend the couple when Blue Eagle accuses Golden Archer of straight up using the B-Mod machine on her. Apex and Quagmire are joined by Blue Eagle to oversee a facility manufacturing chemical tranquilizer pellets called Gumdrops. It tries to hit on one of the women working on the production line, and Blue Eagle immediately orders him to step outside, then reprimands him, then punches him in the face, knowing that Quagmire, former villain turned squadroneer, because his brain was rewritten by the behavioral modification machine, is unable to defend himself from one of the squadron members. Hyperion crashes into the squadron's meeting hall, finds Hyperion and clocks him out of the building. And then they both unleash their I-beams on each other. Hyperion falls to the ground and screams in utter pain as Hyperion blindly marches towards him and begins smashing his face into a pulp. Hyperion calls out that he also can't see anything and realizes that he too burnt out his eyes. The book begins at the funeral of Tom Thumb. Tom has been outfitted in his superhero attire and laid inside one of the hibernaculum caskets, which he designed as a tool to cryogenically freeze the dead so that they can later be resuscitated once the diseases that they died of are curable. Nighthawk and his team, the Redeemers, watch the news footage of the funeral and the subsequent announcement with Zarda regarding the hibernaculum. Nighthawk shuts it off, disgusted that they turned the death of their friend into a propaganda piece. And a few days later at Squadron City, Power Princess calls a meeting to a close and everyone heads off on today's assignment. Hyperion calls Apex over and discusses an issue that he's having with his image simulator glasses that she has designed for him. She takes them away and notes that she'll have to make some minor adjustments and then floats off. Then Zarda and Arcana both help him to the Squadron Lounge for some hibiscus tea. And later, Doc Spectrum and Foxfire, who have started up a relationship, fly to assist a construction crew in the demolition of a row of buildings that will be used as the site of some sort of Utopia program building. And we're finally granted a look at Foxfire's horrifying rotting powers, as in mere seconds, she destroys the entire structure to a crumbling ruin. And meanwhile, at the Squadron Hospital, Dr. Decibel makes his morning rounds and heads to the hospital room of Quagmire, who has been in a coma for about 2, maybe 3 months at this point. And Dr. Decibel opens the door and finds a horrible extra-dimensional mucus leaking out of the man's head. And I might have brought this up prior to this in some earlier episode. I can't really remember. But if I didn't, Quagmire's powers allow him to draw this horrible dark black goop, no, not that horrible black goop, from another dimension that is appropriately named the Dark Force Dimension. Fans of Cloak and Dagger rejoice, because it's kind of a tie-in to that. The Dark Force is a negative, abyssal, black, like dark matter. Essentially, it's a horrible dimension of kind of nothing. It's also what Cloak's body is made out of, and is also a portal too. So when people jump inside of Cloak or whatever, they go there. And the Dark Force gives Cloak power. It's also where Mr. Negative's powers come from. So Dr. Decibel races to the bed and tries desperately to wake him up. And elsewhere, Lamprey and Blue Eagle arrive at a newly designated National Decriminalization Institute with more equipment, and then they're given a tour of the Rehabilitation Center, where they will have 24 behavior modification machines readied at the time of the Institute's opening, with the ability to expand at a later date if necessary. And at the same time, in a civil services building in Midtown Cosmopolis, Whizzer and The Shape recruit Hybermedics for the Hibernaculum Project. The Shape is a hit with the kids, and Whizzer signs an autograph for some fans when Moonglow and Redstone arrive. They announce that they are here to apply to be members of the Squadron Supreme. Whizzer, a bit suspicious, asks that they step outside, and Redstone demonstrates his immense strength as Moonglow shows off her power of flight, control of light, and also gravity. It's all fake. She can't do any of it. She's well, at least I've always thought that she's a telepath, kind of like this world's version of Emma Frost. I honestly don't know if it's also magic, or if it's just magic. I've always just personally thought of her as a pretty strong telepathic, maybe a mutant or something, if this world has mutants, which they seemingly do, because Redstone is like Juggernaut, pretty much. Anyway, that's enough to convince Whizzer, so he blindfolds them and flies them out to Squadron City, where they arrive 2 hours later and are led inside. Meanwhile, Nighthawk watches his trackers of Redstone and Moonglow as Wyatt, now going by the name Black Archer, thanks Nighthawk for his chance to redeem himself. And Nighthawk notes that everyone needs redemption, which is why they are going to destroy the Squadron Supreme. Later that night, the Squadron all meet together to debate and discuss whether or not they should recruit Redstone and Moonglow. Whizzer notes that they're the only superhuman team in America, and that they should be accepting every superhuman into their ranks and training them as heroes, lest they fall into the world of supervillainy. Arcana agrees, but she thinks that they need to run an extensive background check. And Blue Eagle says,
"There's a way we can award them full membership right off the bat. I move that we use the B-Modern device on them, like we did to the Institute of Evil, to ensure their loyalty to us."
Now, wait a minute, Eagle. It was different with the Institute. They were known criminals and villains. We've all agreed that the machine should only be used on convicted felons.
It is the safest and most expedient way to bring in new recruits.
I agree with Wings over here. You'll all be sorry if you don't give the new Joes the treatment.
Help! Help! In the hospital! Help, please!
The Squadron all race across the Crater City to find the hospital overflowing with Quagmire's Dark Force tar. Whizzer races inside and a few seconds later explodes out with a few of the staff. He explains that there's still survivors inside, but he couldn't get past the tar. Power Princess then instructs Spectrum and Hyperion to head back inside with Whizzer. Then she tasks Arcana, Foxfire, and Lamprey to attempt to contain the goop. Then a massive eruption of dark force from one of the upper floors happens. Blue Eagle rescues Arcana as The Shape shields the others. Zarda orders them to instead begin evacuating the area. Hyperion and the others explode out of the roof, Quagmire and Decibel still missing. Whizzer and Spectrum begin forming a flood wall and a moat around the hospital as Power Princess and Hyperion fly around and try and figure out what the hell they're gonna do. And then they realize something. Quagmire must still be in a coma, because the way his power works is that it's his brain itself, his mind, whatever's happening in his brain is creating portals to the other Dark Force dimension and is letting that fluid spill out. Because he's unconscious, he can't control it, and now that means that the bigger the hole in his mind becomes, the more Dark Force energy and liquid and whatever this shit is is going to explode into the real world, and Hyperion asks how they're supposed to close it. And Zarda realizes that the only way they can make sure is to take Quagmire off of life support. She elects to do it herself as the squadron's leader, but Hyperion volunteers. They share a kiss in the event that it is their last, and then Hyperion dives into the Dark Force. Not long after, which took him 27 minutes to swim through, it took him that long to get to Quagmire through the hospital, Hyperion emerges with Decibel's dead body in his hands. And then he tries to explain what happened to Quagmire, but he can only assume that when his brain died, the Dark Force swallowed itself into its home dimension and took his body with it. The end. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It's another downer. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. It's pretty sad, all things considered. It's a very depressing story. A lot of death again. Keep saying it. It's gonna keep happening, especially these last 3 issues. This one I'm not too sure of when the timing is, though, because these past issues, they take place each month. But I don't know, it just seems like it's quite soon after Tom's death. Because Tom died a week after the previous issue, and they're having his funeral. I suppose he's in the hibernaculum, and it's cryogenically frozen his body, and that they've waited this long to make the announcement or something, but I don't think that makes much sense. I feel like this was still pretty recent after the previous issue. So I imagine it's still sometime in December of 1985. Because it doesn't really appear that much has actually happened between the characters in the interim from the death of Tom Thumb issue to this one. I also brought it up last time, but the relationship between Foxfire and Dr. Spectrum is kind of similar to Golden Archer and Lady Lark's post-B-Mod machine, right? Because we've established that the B-modded villains can do nothing against the Squadron, and that they're incapable of even bringing up any concerns that they might have about a member. They're practically robots. Actually, no. I said that last time, but it's worse. They're worse than robots because we saw Ada disregard her programming and inform Ape X that Tom was dying of cancer, even though he ordered her not to tell anybody. But also with Foxfire, we have seen that she, like, prior to the B-Mod thing, she was, like, flirty and kind of promiscuous, so I don't really know what to think about this. The final 2 issues really bring into the question of, did these people truly change? What changed about them? How does it truly work? Or is it just something else that has affected the B-Mod process in some way that Tom Thumb didn't even consider? Because it's pretty easy to argue that all of the quote-unquote good she's been doing since B-Modded is nothing genuine at this point. There's something that happens later that you could make that argument for. But no, I don't think at this point there really is. And then we get poor Quagmire, the man who Blue Eagle beat for flirting with a woman on the job, which, yeah, it's not a great look, but jeez. I wonder if that had anything to do with any kind of projection for Blue Eagle's immense disdain for the likes of Golden Archer and Doc Spectrum. Because Quagmire went into a coma and is dead after saving 30 innocent people. And this is all Blue Eagle's fault, by the way. He's just a piece of shit. He's a bad guy as well. He's not a hero. I mean, like, they all are, but they're all not. Blue Eagle's just a dick. He wants to brainwash new recruits to be loyal to them to the degree that the Institute of Evil former members are now. He just wants to do that with random people without even knowing who they are. And if Blue Eagle had gotten himself under fucking control and knew how to properly handle and express his emotions, this may have never happened, because he would have been there during that gas leak at the production plant, meaning that Quagmire wouldn't have had to have saved those people himself. He could have had help. Dr. Decibel and Quagmire's deaths are caused by Blue Eagle. They could have still been alive, which, as we'll see soon, may not have been the best for the Squadron, but as we'll also see soon, it could have definitely helped them. But don't worry, true believer, because Quagmire is not dead. He actually, get this, winds up on Earth 616, and he's like a villain that fights Quasar, which was another Mark Grunwald comic series. So I guess Mark Grunwald just really liked the idea of this character and wrote himself into a corner with this and was like, I'll bring him over to the main universe. Something happens. He gets sent to the Dark Dimension. I don't think we ever actually find out, but I'd imagine he gets sent to the Dark Force Dimension, and then he rematerializes, I think, near where Man-Thing lives, at like the nexus of whatever in Florida. So that happens, but I don't believe it is ever explained how or why he becomes a villain again. But I think I can safely say something that makes sense, which is that the leaking of the Dark Force matter out of his brain, and then the subsequent immediate flushing of it all back inside somehow did something to counteract and completely alter his brain chemistry and undo the B modification. And one final note I had is that, what's Nighthawk really think of Golden Archer's actions? Does he know that, does he know what Wyatt did to Lady Lark? Does he know the full truth of what happened? Like, did Golden Archer give him, like, his version of the story? And even if he did know, would he care? Because I don't think he would. Because he's fucking just hiring villains. And he needs bodies for his army. He needs members of the Redeemers group. And he can easily look past that. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. What are your feelings and thoughts thus far as we close in on this series? Please let me know. Stay tuned for more, and check out my Etsy shop, blaketwild.etsy.com, for my comics, The Custodians, Agents of Cross, and Destructo Boy, all available on there. Every purchase of a comic comes with a free head sketch of any character of your choosing. Also, check out my Patreon, where you'll have access to early videos when available, as well as all of my comics on there for as little as $2. And also check out my podcast, Comic Shtick Podcast, where comics are my shtick, and the I Need Some Disney podcast, where myself and my Disney-obsessed wife talk about weird Disney stuff. I will see you next time. Bye.